May Stringham Miller, who is Walter's almost last daughter. Can you hear me?
Whose daughter?
I am Rose May Stringham's granddaughter.
Okay.
Marilyn. And my father was Melvin Miller, and then Rose Stringham was his mother, and then Walter Stringham.
Great. Okay. And then let's see, Sarah Mata is my sister, and she comes through Mary Goldie as well, and Tiani is also my sister. And then down at the bottom, Donna is a cousin through Ray's sister, who comes also through Mary Goldie. So that's all of us. I'm sorry to rush that a little bit, but since we kind of got going slow here, I thought that would work best. So we will go ahead and turn the time over to Ray, and he's got his presentation.
Okay.
And if all of you would please mute your mics too while he's talking, that will help.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I'm pulling up a screen here, which hopefully everybody will be able to see. And we'll do a slide presentation. And so let's see. Can everybody see that? I should just say Polly Knight and her dates. Okay. And let's get started here. This is where Polly Knight was traditionally thought to have been born. Halifax Township, Windham County, Vermont. On 18 January 1895, Joseph Knight Sr. from Marlborough, and if you can see my cursor, it's right here above Halifax, and Polly Peck from Guilford, right here, just east of Halifax. They marry and make their home in Marlborough Township, Windham County, Vermont. There they have children. Nahum, born in 1796, Esther, born in 1798, and Newell, born in 1800. Then they move to the next township south, Halifax, which is also in Windham County. There they have more children, Anna, born in 1804, and Joseph Jr., born in 1808. Polly Knight is then born on 7 March 1811. For a long time, it was thought that she was also born in Halifax. But 2 of her older brothers left record of the family's move from Vermont to New York. Joseph Jr. states they moved to New York in December 1808. Newell says they moved when he was 9 years of age, which would be late 1809 or early 1810. In either case, they moved before Polly was born in 1811. Why would they move? Now here's the route from Vermont to New York. This is a modern day route. We don't know the exact route they followed. But why would they move from Vermont to New York? Well, we can only guess why they left. Another war was in the air. The papers were full of it. During the Revolutionary War, most settlers had left Vermont because it was so dangerous, and war did come in 1812. Vermont was especially close to the British garrison in Montreal. Vermont had a sometimes harsh farming climate. They could have been worried about there being enough land for their children to settle nearby. There could have been dozens of reasons. But uh, here we have New York. The main attraction in New York is clear. Polly's parents and family were already there. Um, you see the red highlighted area. Her father, Captain Joseph Peck, had been awarded a land grant in Jericho Township, later called Bainbridge, which would later be in Shenango County, New York, to reimburse him for losses he sustained fighting for New York during the Vermont War and during the Revolutionary War. And there's a whole big story I wished I had time to tell about that. Wonderful story. But moving on, so Joseph Knight Sr. and his family joined his wife's parents and their family in Jericho Township in modern-day Shenango County. The highlighted part is modern-day Shenango County. Jericho now called Bainbridge, was originally much larger. If you can see my cursor there, it was about a quarter of modern-day Shenango. In fact, Jericho Township was formed before Shenango County was. And if we move on, the Knight family settled on the Susquehanna River in the southern part of Jericho Township, the red highlighted area, the part that is now Afton Township. And they settled, if you can see my cursor, they settled about 6 miles upriver from the southern border. And it's here in Jericho Township where Polly is born on 7 March 1811. So Polly is the 6th of 7 living children. She has 3 older brothers, Nahum, Newell, and Joseph, 2 older sisters, Esther and Anna, and will soon have 1 younger sister, Elizabeth. And the family goes boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, and then soon another girl. After living for about 2 years in Jericho Township, the Knights moved 6 miles downriver to a better spot on the Susquehanna in the part of Windsor Township, Broome County, which becomes Colesville Township. And if you can see my cursor, you can see a blue dot right there. The Knight farm that they eventually settle on includes that blue dot and goes down to the river, if you can see my cursor right there. So why is it a better spot? There, Joseph Knight Sr. obtains 142 acres of land, including a pond, Pickerel Pond, which drains into the Susquehanna and which he uses to power the 2 carding mills and the grist mill that he builds there. Some claim that he also ran a sawmill. He settles there working as a farmer and a miller. This is where the youngest child, Elizabeth, is born 6 years after Polly, in 1817. And this is where Joseph Smith begins working for him 15 years later.
Ray, just break in a second. We have a request that you please speak a little louder.
I am practically eating my microphone, but I've got a microphone problem. So
well, that's better. Now that you're eating it, we like it.
Okay, let me know if it gets dim again. Okay, so they move. If you see the cursor here, they move from modern-day Shenango County to modern-day Broome County, which is highlighted here. And this is what the Susquehanna River country looks like. This location is about 60 miles downriver from the farm, but it was such a good picture. I wanted to show you, give you a feel for the countryside. This is a Google map of Joseph Knight's farm. It included Pickerel Pond, if you can see my cursor here in the center, and extended down to the river, 142 acres. And included all of Pickerel Pond. And in time, he acquires more land and hires hands to work the farms. So why would he want more farms? He's got 142 acres. Well, he wanted them to have enough grain for his milling business. That's also why he eventually met the Smith family. He was looking for more grain. And here we have a grainy view of the Knight farm today. This is the pond reflecting the sky. That's Pickerel Pond, they probably didn't have a tennis court in Joseph Knight's day, but otherwise, this is the place where Polly lived and grew to adulthood. Joseph Knight prospers. He doesn't get rich, but he replaces their log cabin with a nice home. During this time of work and growth, in April 1821, Colesville Township is formed from part of Windsor Township. So by 1826, the four oldest children have all married and are all living in Colesville in their own homes, raising their own families. Joseph Jr., Polly, and Elizabeth are still at home. It is in 1826 that Joseph Smith comes to work for Joseph Knight. In November 1826, Joseph Smith tells the Knight family in secret about his vision and the gold plates. The following year, on 20 September 1827, Joseph Smith Sr. arrives at the Smith home. Joseph Smith has told him when he's going to receive the gold plates. And 2 days later, on 22 September 1827, Joseph Smith uses Joseph Knight's horse and wagon to travel to the Hill Cumorah with his wife, Emma, where he obtains the plates. Later, he describes the plates to Joseph Knight Sr. Actually, when he gets home, he describes the plates to Joseph Knight Sr., who would have shared these experiences with his family, including his daughter Polly. Joseph Knight helps support Joseph Smith as he translates the gold plates. In March 1829, Joseph Knight travels to where Joseph Smith is then living in Harmony, Pennsylvania, with supplies to help with the translation. His wife, Polly Knight, goes with him and is converted. We don't know when Polly Knight became converted to the gospel, but by March 1829, both her parents were converts. She had just turned 18. April 6, 1830, the church is organized. Joseph Knight Sr. is present and almost gets baptized, but decides to finish reading the Book of Mormon first. Arrangements are made for Joseph Smith to travel to Colesville to perform a number of baptisms. Saturday, 26 June 1830, Joseph Smith, his wife Emma, Oliver Cowdery, John Whitmer, and David Whitmer visit Colesville. They erect a dam across a stream to prepare a place for baptisms. A mob tears the dam down before the meeting scheduled for the next day on Sunday. Sunday, June 27th, 1830, they hold their meeting but are unable to perform the planned baptisms. So on Monday, early in the morning, on the 28th of June, 1830, the dam is repaired before the mob is alert. Polly is baptized by Oliver Cowdery, along with her parents, Joseph Smith's wife, Emma, and others. So Polly was baptized at the same time as Emma Smith. Then a mob carries Joseph Smith away before he can confirm them. Joseph Knight hires lawyers who successfully defend Joseph Smith twice, first in Shenango County, then in Broome County, where Colesville is located. After her baptism, Polly Knight's brother, Newell Knight, stated that, quote, Polly became the target of a local priest's tirade against Mormonism. He had chosen my sister as a mark for his abuse. Polly and the minister exchanged letters in which the priest was so decidedly used up that he was glad to give it up and back out completely whipped, close quote. Newell regretted he did not save the letters, quote, so that my children may see how a weak woman, inspired by the Lord, was able to confound and put to confusion the learned of the day, close quote. Sunday, 29 August 1830, Joseph Smith returns and confirms Polly and others, members of the church. Now notice that that's July, August, that's 2 months later about. Now, here we have a list of the original members of the Colesville branch. And you can find this list on Family Tree in Polly's memories. Hiram Smith, Joseph's brother, is branch president. He's living in Colesville with his family. On the 30th of December, 1830, and the 2nd of January, 1831, Joseph Smith receives revelation for the Colesville branch, and the church to move to Kirtland, Ohio. Beginning in January and extending into February 1831, Joseph Knight Sr. transports Joseph Smith and Joseph's wife, Emma, along with his own wife, Polly Peck, and an unmarried daughter to Kirtland. Dr. Larry Porter says in an October 1978 Ensign article that the daughter was Elizabeth, but in a February 2001 Ensign article, he states the daughter was Polly. So Polly Knight may have accompanied Joseph Smith when he first went to Kirtland, Ohio. Most of the rest of the Colesville branch, 68 people of the 84 original branch members, less Hiram's family and Joseph Knight Sr.'s family. So in reality, all but about 8 or 9 of the Colesville branch members followed them to Kirtland via the Erie Canal and Lake Erie in April through May 1831. On 14 May 1831, the bulk of the Colesville branch arrives at Fairport, Ohio, which is the port on Lake Erie closest to Kirtland, if you see the cursor right here. They arrive at Fairport, Ohio by boat and travel overland to Kirtland, Ohio. There they are asked to stay together as a branch, move to Thompson, about 16 miles away, and live the United Order. Joseph Knight Sr. and those with him joined the rest of the Colesville branch in Thompson. The land in Thompson is owned by Lehman Copley, who leaves the church and breaks his agreement, and the Colesville Saints are in a predicament. On 10 June 1831, Newell is sent to seek counsel from Joseph Smith, and on 10 June 1831, Joseph Smith receives the revelation recorded as D&C Section 54. The Colesville Saints are counseled to move to Missouri. So just 8 days later, imagine preparing to move almost 1,300 miles in just over a week. But anyway, the Colesville branch leaves for Independence, Jackson County, Missouri on 18 June 1831, traveling overland to Cincinnati. And if you follow the red line, that is the Colesville Saints path to Jackson County, Missouri. And from Cincinnati to St. Louis, they travel by riverboat. Joseph Knight's wife, Polly Peck, becomes very ill, but insists on continuing, desiring to see Zion before she dies. Her son Newell buys lumber for a coffin and carries it with them. They arrive in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri on 25 July 1831. On August 2nd, 1831, the prophet Joseph Smith and others assisted by the Colesville Saints in placing the first log as a foundation for the establishment in Zion. And this is a plaque commemorating that event. Polly Peck, the wife of Joseph Peck Sr., Polly Peck Knight, the wife of Joseph Knight Sr., dies just 4 days later on the 6th of August, 1831, while they're camping west of the Big Blue River, which is west of Independence in Caw Township, Jackson County, Missouri. She is the first member of the church to die in Missouri. Joseph Smith conducts her funeral the next day on 7 August, 1831. They are on the western edge of the frontier, and Polly has lost her mother. At this point in time, records become scanty about what happens. But Parley P. Pratt stays with the Colesville Saints during the winter of 1831 to 32, and he writes about it in his autobiography. I was now taken sick with the fever and ague, owing to the exposures of the climate through which we had traveled. I suffered extremely for several months, being brought very low with fever and with other afflictions. I tarried mostly with a branch of the church commonly called the Colesville Branch. The Colesville Branch was among the first organized by Joseph Smith and constituted the first members of the church in Missouri. They had arrived late in the summer and cut some hay for their cattle, sowed a little grain, and prepared some ground for cultivation, and were engaged during the fall and winter in building log cabins and so forth. The winter was cold, and for some time about 10 families lived in one log cabin, which was open and unfinished, while the frozen ground served for a floor. Our food consisted of beef and a little bread made of corn, which had been grated into coarse meal by rubbing the ears on a tin grater. This was rather an inconvenient way of living for a sick person, but it was for the gospel's sake, and all were very cheerful and happy. We enjoyed many happy seasons in our prayer and other meetings, and the Spirit of the Lord was poured out upon us, and even on the little children, insomuch that many of 8, 10, or 12 years of age spake and prayed and prophesied in our meetings and in our family worship. There was a spirit of peace and union and love and goodwill manifested in this little church in the wilderness, the memory of which will be ever dear to my heart. In April 1832, Joseph Smith again visits Missouri, meets with leaders, and holds a church conference. Following the conference, he meets privately with the Colesville Saints. Joseph Knight Sr. records the event. Quote, the next year in 1832, he, Joseph Smith, came again to Missouri and set things in order and called the Colesville Church together and sealed them up to eternal life. And this made some little feeling among others, but I think he knew best. Close quote. The ordinance of the sealing to eternal life, or having your calling and election made sure, is an almost unknown ordinance in the church today, but is still practiced. Polly's older sister Esther dies probably in early 1833 in Caw Township, Jackson County, Missouri, which was just west of Independence, Missouri. Esther dies a few weeks after giving birth to Hiram. She never recovers from his birth. Historians disagree about the year of her death, and I was going to give the evidence, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that it's most probable that she died in early 1833. We know she did die in Taw Township, in Caw Township. In the winter of 1833, they are forced out of Jackson County, Missouri, and take refuge in Clay County, Missouri. The Colesville branch remains together and forms a small settlement on the Missouri bottoms in Clay County, building temporary houses. In 1835, Polly marries William Stringham in Missouri City, Clay County, Missouri. She has been caring for his and her sister Esther's children for 2 years now. In 1836, the Saints are forced to leave Clay County as well. The Colesville branch breaks up, but while most of the Saints have left Clay County, on 4 February 1837, the following year, Polly's only child, a son, Walter, is born in Atamba, Clay County, Missouri. After that, William Stringham and his family relocate from Clay County to Caldwell County and settle about 15 miles east of Far West, which is also in Caldwell County, Missouri. This is a drawing, a map of, this is a map where you can see the locations. And here we have a drawing of Far West. On 27 October 1838, Governor Lilburn Boggs signs the extermination order. He's governor of Missouri. This is also known as Missouri Executive Order 44. He authorized the killing of any Mormon. 3 days later, on 30 October 1838, the Hans Mill Massacre occurs. Historians debate whether the attackers knew about the extermination order or just proceeded anyway. I wish that there was time to tell you more about the massacre, but the Hans Mill survivors flee to William Stringham's home. His home is the closest home to Hans Mill, about a mile away. William and others mount guard through the night. Polly's son, Walter, is about 1.5 years old. You can imagine what's going through Polly's mind. The next day, 31 October 1838, Joseph Smith is arrested in Far West. The expulsion from Caldwell County begins, which is also the expulsion from Missouri. And here we lose track of the Stringham family for a while. The Saints are scattered far and wide. Some make their way here, some make their way there. The 1840 census, 2 years later, was supposed to be taken as of 1 June 1840. It shows William Stringham and his family living in Springfield Township, Sangamon County, Illinois. next to William's brother, George. Both families were members of the original Colesville branch. William Stringham is a tailor. In those days, it was not unusual for people desiring a new suit, or I'm sorry, in those days, it was not usual for people desiring a new suit or dress to visit the tailor, but rather the reverse. The tailor would visit them, often several times. William and Polly's young son, Walter, would accompany his father on many of these trips. In that way, as a young boy, he had the experience of sitting on the laps of a number of men as his father worked, including some who are now regarded as great, Joseph Smith and Abraham Lincoln among them. So we now come to Nauvoo. In time, sometime between 1840 and early 1842, the Stringham family make their way to Nauvoo. At first, for about a year, they live in the mansion house with the Smith family while their own home is being built. We know from the Nauvoo census that they are in Nauvoo by at least February 1842. On the 14th of April, 1842, 2 weeks after the organization of the Relief Society, Polly Knight Stringham is received into membership, along with her stepmother Phoebe Knight and her aunt Martha Peck. Polly's remaining living sisters, Anna Knight DeMille and Elizabeth Knight Johnson, joined the Relief Society a few weeks later. Polly performs various service tasks for the Relief Society. We have a record that on 16 June 1843, she volunteers to, quote, make men's clothes and take work on the temple, close quote. Polly's son Walter plays the violin at dances in Nauvoo. Family tradition asserts that Joseph Smith danced at some of the dances Walter played at. (27 April 1844). Polly dies of heart failure. That's congestive heart failure. It's not known how she contracted this, but it could have been contracted during pregnancy. When her son was born about 7.5 years earlier. She's buried in Nauvoo exactly 2 months before Joseph Smith is martyred. So she dies 27 April 1844, and on 27 June 1844, Joseph and Hiram Smith are martyred in Carthage, Illinois. Here's another view of Carthage. 20 days later, on 17 July 1844, William Stringham marries his third wife, Jemima Young, in Nauvoo. They are married for 6 months, then are divorced. Then on 22 January 1846, about 2 years later, William Stringham marries his fourth wife, Eliza Lake, also in Nauvoo. During February to May 1846, the expulsion of the Saints begins. Most of the Saints leave Nauvoo. The majority cross the Mississippi by barge, but winter becomes so cold that some cross the river on the frozen ice. By the summer of 1846, the only people left in Nauvoo were a few hundred Latter-day Saints, most of whom are poor, sick, or otherwise incapable of beginning the trek west. Those who had purchased property from the departing Saints, and a few individuals like Emma Smith who chose not to go. Joseph Knight Sr. was one of these. The Nauvoo temple is finally completed by Saints rushing to finish it before they are forced to leave. It is dedicated on 1 May 1846, after most of the Saints have already left. Remaining Saints hastily perform ordinances before leaving Nauvoo. And here are a couple of images of the modern day rebuilt Nauvoo temple. And this is the Battle of Nauvoo. In an effort to drive the last remnants from Nauvoo, the Battle of Nauvoo begins on 10 September 1846 and lasts 6 days, in spite of a treaty signed by both parties. By 1847, William Stringham has reached Garden Grove, and you can see Garden Grove if you can see the cursor. It's right here. Has reached Garden Grove, Iowa territory. Garden Grove is the first of many settlements established by the Saints after the expulsion from Nauvoo. Joseph Knight Sr. reaches Mount Pisgah, Iowa territory, which is right here. Oh, I'm circling the wrong spot, right here. As does his son Newell and Newell's family. Mount Pisgah is the second settlement established by the Saints after the expulsion from Nauvoo. Like Garden Grove, it acted as a way station for Saints leaving Nauvoo and crossing Iowa territory. It is in Mount Pisgah that the U.S. Army first called on the Saints to furnish volunteers for the Mormon Battalion. Both Father Knight and his son Newell die in Mount Pisgah during the harsh winter. Around midnight on October 8 to 9, 1848, the Nauvoo temple is set on fire by an unknown arsonist. Nauvoo's residents attempted to put out the fire, but the temple is totally destroyed. By 1850, William Stringham and his family have left Garden Grove, possibly to find work, and are living about 65 to 75 miles east in District 13, Wapello County, Iowa, on 21 November 1850. Then by 22 May 1855, William Stringham and family are living in Jacksonville, Morgan County, Illinois, which is just west of Springfield, Illinois, where he, members of his family, and others were rebaptized. There's details, but I'm going to skip them. The following year, both William Stringham and his brother Philip and their families travel to Utah with the Canute Peterson wagon train, which departs
Am I the only one who can't hear
Florence,
anything?
Nebraska,
Question mark.
also known as
Am
Winter
I the only
Quarters,
one who can't?
on 27 June 1856, and arrives in Salt Lake on 16 through the 23rd of September 1856. This is the same year the Martin Handcart Company arrives. Walter Stringham and his family live in Provo at first and move in February 1857 to Manti. So I'm going to pause right here. Julie, do you want me to keep on going? I've got, I would guess, 10, 12 minutes left.
Yes, what we'll do is, Ray, you can go ahead and keep going. We, like I said before, if anyone came in late, you're not missing anything if you stay in this group a little longer, because it's just the lunch hour. So you're not missing anything, and the classes will be available forever. So you're not missing anything, but it's up to you. If you need to leave, we're glad you were here. Otherwise, we'll just let Ray go ahead and finish. We've got, I would like Marilyn Smolka and Megan Coxon to both put your email addresses in the chat box, because I don't have yours. So go ahead and keep going, Ray. Thank you.
Okay. So now, Polly Knight's family, son and husband, are in Manti, Utah. Here we have oops, I didn't move it, so I'll just go forward. Here we have a picture of her son, Walter Stringham. In 1858, a year after they arrive in Manti, during the tensions leading up to the Black Hawk War, Polly's son, Walter, has his horse shot out from under him during a skirmish with the Utes. They later regard him as charmed because they could not kill him with his horse. On 3 November 1865, Polly's husband, William Stringham, dies in Manti, Utah, age 77 years, 7 months, and 24 days. You almost didn't have Polly Knight as your ancestor. Polly only had one child, Walter, and Walter only married one wife, Mary Ellen Tuttle. But that marriage almost didn't happen. Here's why. Before Walter even arrived in Manti, a young Romeo by the name of Fred Cox had wooed all the eligible girls, then decided he would marry Mary Ellen. All he had to do was tell all the other girls goodbye. He decided that a dance on 20 April 1857 was his best opportunity. One girl, Lucy Allen, would be a particular problem. She had thrown herself at Fred and caused him some embarrassment. To avoid further embarrassment, he decided to tell her during the dance intermission outside. He invited her outside for a walk, and she made hints about marriage. They walked to the creek bridge. There they met Bishop Snow, who wanted to wed Mary Ellen himself as a polygamous wife. He saw his opportunity, and he asked Fred and Lucy if they would like him to marry them. Lucy was eager for the adventure. With a bit of foot dragging, Fred agreed, thinking it wouldn't matter, that it was all a joke. and the bishop went through the motions quickly without witnesses. When all was done, neither Fred nor Lucy thought anything of it. Lucy went out of town for the summer to work, and Fred wooed and proposed to Mary Ellen, and she joyously accepted. But when they went to Bishop Snow for permission to travel to Salt Lake to be married in the endowment house, he asked Fred if he was able to financially support a polygamous wife so soon. He was astounded. He thought it had been a jest, but Bishop Snow was adamant. Parents were called to support the young couple. Finally, they appealed to Brigham Young during General Conference in Salt Lake. He thought about it a bit, then said, quote, "Brother Cox, you are a married man. I would advise you to go home and make the best of it," close quote. Lucy was equally surprised when she was told. 2 years later, Mary Ellen Tuttle and Walter Stringham were married on 19 June 1859. Walter was a favorite among the children. They would follow him everywhere. He always seemed to have peppermints in his pockets for them. As you remember, he played the violin. Children used to beg him again and again to play the Arkansas Traveler for him, and he would. He was also much in demand for dances, weddings, and so on. Walter was a stonemason and plasterer and had his own kiln for preparing wine. Walter and Mary Ellen had 15 children. This picture shows 12 of them. And you can find this picture again on Family Tree with under Walter with all of the people labeled, and you may be able to identify your ancestor in this picture. Walter died in Manti on 16 September 1924, age 87 years, 7 months, and 12 days. And that's the end of the presentation. So, Julie, I turn the mic back over to you.
All right. You can stop your screen sharing as well.
Oh, sorry. Stop share.
Okay. So do we have any questions from anyone that they would like to ask? Just go ahead and unmute your mic and ask them if you have any for Ray. No?
I had a question.
Okay. Tammy?
So I was a little bit confused as to, I always knew that Joseph Knight Sr. as well as the William Stringham and Walter Stringham and stuff. I knew that Walter didn't make it in and William didn't make it in until quite a bit later. But when did you say it is that they left? Did they take a while to leave Nauvoo, or did they just take a long time to get to Utah?
Ray, maybe you could explain to us about William not coming west and that. I don't think you covered that really.
Yeah, I kind of glossed over that. There's a lot that we just don't know. He had been he had given up everything and moved to Kirtland, and then lost what little he had left in Kirtland, and then followed the prophet and moved to Independence, and driven out and lost everything again, and then driven out of Clay, driven out of Caldwell. He may even have been in Ray County. Some of the Knights were, and driven out of there as well. Driven out of Nauvoo. We really don't know what happened. It may just have been too much for him. Plus his first wife has died, his second wife has died, his third wife and he are divorced. His fourth wife, Eliza Lake, may have had something to say about it. People he knows have died. Newell has died. Father Knight has died. We really don't know quite what's going through his mind. It's either Newell Knight or Joseph, and I think it was, I say either Newell Knight or Joseph Jr. That goes back to Nauvoo after getting their own families to safety, and takes another wagon load of families, including Joseph Knight Sr. And Walter may have been one of the ones that stayed and fought in the Nauvoo War. We just don't know. But what happens is, Garden Grove is only a way station, and we know he gets to Garden Grove by 1857. But that's as far west as we've tracked him. If he goes further, we don't know. What we do know is from sometime between 47 and the census in 1850, he moves east about 65 to 70 miles from Garden Grove, and that area is a mining town. Well, it's a mining area. The town hasn't formed yet, and he may have gone there to get work. And the census catches him and his family there. And then by 1855, missionaries find him back near where he had lived before, in Springfield, Illinois. He's one county to the west, living next door. Well, not next door, living close to a brother, Philip. And William is rebaptized along with his family, including Walter and Eliza Lake. And there's a 4-year-old William that I think is William's son, who's also baptized. I guess the guidelines weren't so strict then. And his brother Philip and his family are baptized, and a couple others that I haven't been able to determine whether they're relatives or not. But he's basically returned to an area that is familiar to him. He's returned to the one place he didn't get driven out of during the last roughly 20 years. So that's what we know, and there's a lot of blank spaces and missing records. And I wished I could give you a better answer, but we don't know why. We can make guesses, but we don't know why. And a lot of details are missing.
Do we not have any journals at all of either Polly or William or Walter?
Well, Polly died in '44, and we don't know of any journal from her, and I'm not aware of anything that Walter or William kept. There are Mary Ellen Tuttle was the daughter of, if memory serves, of John Henry Tuttle. And John Henry with two brothers, Azariah, and I'm blanking on the other brother's name right now. But the other brother was with the Mormon Battalion and went into politics after he got to Manti, and he left quite a few writings, but he might not have written about his niece's husband's father. A lot of people were just glad to get to Utah alive. There was a lot of persecution. So if there's a journal, it hasn't been found yet that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Ray. Are there any other questions for Ray?
Julie, there is one thing that I'll mention that I didn't mention in the presentation. William Stringham was actually married a fifth time, kind of. After his death, his widow, Eliza Lake, had him sealed posthumously to her deceased sister. So in some records, you'll find record of a fifth marriage, but if you look at the dates, you'll notice that it was after he was dead. So,
so like it or not, huh?
Well, I suppose he has the option to accept or reject, but anyway.
Right. Okay, I have a couple of other pictures that I hadn't planned to show, but maybe I will show them just out of interest here, since you talked about some of those things. Let's see, trying to share my screen, but it's not letting me. There we go. Okay, so all right, so here's the gravestones of first his William. I don't know if you can, there you go. Okay, can you see that one?
It's very small.
Oh, okay, well, I can't make it bigger. It says William Stringham, born March 10th, 1788, North Hempstead, New York, died November 3rd, 1865. And that's in Manti. And then if we go to this one is Walter Stringham, born February 4th, 1837, died September 18th, 1924. That's also in Manti. Walter, as we know, was a lath and plasterer. Here's what that looks like. You probably have seen that, but they'd put the wood on here and plaster here, as well as playing the fiddle. That was his job of what he did. here's a picture in their old age of Walter and Mary Ellen Tuttle Stringham. Here's Walter and here's Mary Ellen, and John Henry Tuttle and his wife, Sarah Butler. So that was taken in 1902. Here's what Polly Peck Knight looked like.
Actually, let me jump in. You'll observe that we don't have pictures of Joseph Knight or Joseph Jr. or Polly or any of those, because photography really wasn't very common, and the provenance or the source of this picture has never been adequately explained. It just appeared out of nowhere in an area where there was no photography going on, and they got a picture of her and not her husband in a male-dominated society. I have always questioned the authenticity of this picture. Most of the early pictures don't start coming until the late 1880s, and she's dead by 1831, more than 50 years earlier. So
So if you meet this woman in heaven, it may not be the right person. Okay, good point. All right, then I think that's about all. You probably know about the story, most of you, about Joseph Smith and the cane. This is Father Knight, Joseph Knight Sr., who Joseph Smith met on the street and gave him his cane, and that cane is still around, and it's in the church museum.
I got to see it.
And we've seen it live before. And then, of course, this is just a statue of the Black Hawk War, where was it Walter fought in, or was it William Ray?
it was Walter.
Walter, yeah.
Well, William was too old by then, but
Right. Okay. And here's the Manti Temple behind there. So I think that's all probably that you. Oh, here's a death in the newspaper of William Stringham. It's down here. It says in Manti, Sutton Peak County, November 3rd, William Stringham, age 77 years and 6 months. He came into the church when 6 members composed the whole number of Latter-day Saints, and through all persecutions in the states, came to Utah in 1858 and has throughout been a true saint and faithful elder in Israel. And it's interesting that says it's Cox, I wonder if that was the Fred Cox wrote it up. No, I'm sure it wasn't, but just a joke there.
Let me jump in again. When William joined the church, he joined at the same time as Polly, and the same time as Polly's sister Esther, and that was in June when the baptism was held. And I need to refresh my memory, but there were about 27 members of the church then, not 6. So the newspaper got that.
Okay. Well, you know how newspapers are. They're like the internet. You don't get a correction. It gets perpetuated forever. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So I think that's probably, this is the endowment house where Walter was sealed to his wives, and anyway, I think that's probably about it. I don't think there's any other things there that you'd be interested in. So,
I have a question, Julie.
yes, who's talking?
This is Ben.
Oh, hi, Ben. Okay, your brother, right? Hi, Ben.
Hi. They say that he joined the church when there were 6 members. Was this the second time they had a baptism? So there had only been 6 members, and he joined that next group that made the 27. Was that the next group, Ray, or or how does that work?
Oh, well, there were a number of baptisms. There were baptisms uh, at the time the church was organized, and there was another group you're asking me for things that I would ordinarily double check before I spoke, but it was about a week later, I think, in Fayette, they baptized a group, and Newell Knight couldn't wait for Joseph Smith to come to Colesville, so he journeyed to Joseph and got baptized. So there were the Colesville baptism was not the second baptism, and I'd have to do some looking to see what number it was. It's recorded in the history of the church. I just sometimes don't remember things.
Okay, that's all. I was just wondering that. Thank you.
The Colesville Saints were one of the first groups in the whole church to be baptized as a group like that. Isn't that right, Ray?
Well, if Emma was baptized with them, I would assume that was pretty soon after.
Right,
Pretty
right.
close to be in the next, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
it was. The other thing about the Colesville branch is as you look through the roster of members, if I may, let me.
I've got that right. I can show that really easily. I've got it on that page.
Yeah, but you've got it too small to read. So let me pull up the one that I enlarged.
Okay.
So everybody can see it. If I can find it here, there we go. Open that and share my screen. So, okay, I've shared the screen. Can people see it?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at that list, not all, but most of the people are Knight family. So you start with the Knights right here, if you can see my cursor. And then you have the Pecks, and they're all relatives, mostly brothers and their families of Polly Peck. So you got the Pecks. And then you've got the Slades, which are again related to they're basically families of Polly's sisters who married into the Slades. Here you've got Hiram Smith and his family. Then you've got the Stringhams. And then over here, you've got the DeMilles and the Culvers. So you can see that well over half, more like 2/3 or so of the Colesville Saints were actually the extended Knight family. So tell me when you're done looking, and I'll unshare.
And like he said before, this list is available on, if you go to Polly's page on Family Search, it's in her memories. So you could look at it longer too if you wanted to.
Julie,
Yes.
this is Dave,
Okay.
your son. I have a question.
Yes.
I would like to ask anyone who's on the call, including you and Ray and anyone else, who has a memory of someone from this family, and how far back does it go? Does anyone remember Mary Goldie Stringham or any of the other children from Mary Ellen Tuttle and Walter Stringham?
Well, Mary Ellen Tuttle was the mother of my grandfather. So she was my great-grandmother, Mary Ellen Stringham. And I am 65 years old, So nobody living would know her, would know Mary Ellen Stringham or Mary Goldie Stringham.
It looks like she died in 1964.
Mary Goldie?
Yep.
That's
But
got to be-
she was number 6 or 7 of 15 kids. So maybe, does anyone remember
Wow.
any of her
This is
siblings?
Marilyn. This is Marilyn Smolka. I am the granddaughter of Rose May Stringham, who is Mary Goldie's younger sister. And I, of course, remember my grandmother very, very vividly, and remember her talking about all of her sisters especially, and how close she was to them and how many things they did together. And I even have pictures of 4 of the sisters, and it's posted on Rose May Stringham's memory page.
Wow.
So I have quite an extensive amount of information posted on Rose May Stringham Miller Crook's memory page, but she's listed, of course, as Rose May Stringham.
That's great. That's great to know. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any other memories about Polly that Ray didn't share, or about the family that you would like to share with us?
I wish I did. I wish I had asked my grandmother stories about her mother who came across the plains when she was 8 years old. Why
Wow.
didn't I ask her? I don't know. I do have a wonderful picture of Mary Ellen, and I also have that posted on Mary Ellen's page, and I think you probably have that too.
That's great. Are there any other questions for Ray or for anyone else, or any other comments that anyone would like to make about this? That was great. Great job, Ray. Thank you for all that work.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to know that I have relatives out there from the Walter Knight or Walter Stringham family.
Yes, and I've got all of everyone's email address. I can make sure that all of you know all of this has been recorded. Our breakout session has been recorded, as well as the other groups are supposed to be recording theirs, as well as that first meeting we had this morning. All of those things are recorded, and they're going to be put on the Knight family page. I don't know how soon they'll get that done, but it will be put up there, so you can go and watch the other groups' videos. You can rewatch this one if you'd like to, you know, listen to it on your own time. Or like I said, those classes will also be available. I don't know exactly, they haven't given us a list of what the classes are, so I don't know what they are, but
This is Marilyn. I have one more thing to say
sure.
about that picture where you have Walter Stringham and Mary Ellen with 12 of their children. I noticed in that picture that their hats are all hanging on the tree in back of the picture. And so the photographer must have said, I need you to take your hats off. And so they probably hung their hats on the tree in back of the picture. And the Stringhams were photographers in Manti. So they always had wonderful pictures. And I even have a picture of one of the dogs that he took as a portrait.
Can you bring that picture up again, Ray, that last one that you used in the presentation, and let's look at the hats?
I'm told that my grandmother had red hair. So see the hats on the back, hanging on the back of the tree?
Yeah.
I love it.
Which one of those is your grandmother?
The little girl standing in between Walter's knees.
Oh, wow. And ours, Mary Goldie, is the one on the far left of the picture standing up there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Coxons are related to John Henry, who they said is the far right young man standing up. Is that right, Aaron?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
The right one.
Well, amazingly, between 1860 and 1890, when those children were born in Manti, 14 lived to be married. That is an amazing figure at that time.
Oh, for that time period, really is. That really is amazing. And Ray says that on Family Search, you can see the tagging, which will show you who each of these children is, but we can't, it's a proprietary thing, and so we couldn't bring in the tagging and show you, you know, just
I also have that tagged under in Rose May Stringham's
Okay, so
memory
we
also.
can go there to see who the others are, but I think those are the only 3 children that we have anybody hear from. Is that right? Just Mary Goldie and John Henry and Rose.
May.
Is that right? Anybody else sneak in and they're from somebody else that we didn't know? Okay, so those are the 3 children represented today in this group, but you can see there would be a lot of other descendants as well. If we could get them coming, that'd be great. All right, so what we'll do now is that when I find out what the links are to those, to the videos and the classes and that, when I get that information, I will send an email to each of you with those links so that you'll have them, and you may even get them before I send them, I don't know. But anyway, we'll make an effort to make sure you all have the links. And if you would share those with your other family members that weren't here today. I know we had several that signed up but didn't come, and that might have been due to the problem that they had at the beginning when they were only letting 100 people into the meeting, and then people probably quit trying because they thought, well, I can't get in. So they got that fixed, but other people may not have figured that out. So anyway, send it out to anybody you know that could be a relative so that they can see it too. And so if you don't have anything else to say in this group right now, does anyone have anything more they want to say in this group?
I just had a quick question. That last picture, I'm not able to find it. Where's that linked at?
Ray, where did you get that picture from on Family Search?
Oh, this picture did come from Family Search, but I don't remember if it
I
came
have,
from.
this is Marilyn. It's on, I have it under Rose May's memories.
Okay, so if you go to Rose May Stringham and under
I
her,
have an original in my scrapbook.
awesome.
So I posted it on that site, along with a number of others. I have several that were later that I've also posted if you look under Rose May Stringham.
Okay,
Great. So yeah, just go there and go to her memories underneath her name, and you'll find it there.
And I also have, you know, any stories that I was able to find. I have also posted those in the stories section. And I also have documents. So I have quite a few documents and stories that I've posted.
That's great.
I've seen that picture before, and I don't think I looked under Rose May, so I think it may also be under Walter or someone.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
because they link it to lots of people, which is
right.
good.
Anybody that was tagged in the picture, it would be on their site as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a camera on my desktop, so you can't see me, but I'm really smiling.
Well, we're smiling that you're here too. And we appreciate that a lot. So now what the rest of the agenda is for the day is until 1 o'clock, there's lunch. This is Mountain Time. I assume we're not all on Mountain Time because I know 2 at least that aren't. So, but anyway, Mountain Time, it goes from 12 to 1 is lunch and the class links. And if you registered, she said that she was going to send an email at 11 o'clock. I haven't looked at my email to see if she did, but she was going to send an email with those class links. But if not, the class links are on the Knight Facebook page right now. So you could just search for Joseph Knight Senior Facebook page, and the links are there too right now, but then later she'll move them over to the Knight website. So that goes till 1, and then from 1 to 2, they're going to discuss the book from the Newell Knight history book that's called The Rise of the Latter-day Saints. And that's written by William G. Hartley and Michael Hubbard McKay. And as you know, William G. Hartley also wrote the other two night histories of Ye Are My Friends and Stand By My Servant, or no, let's see. Yeah, Ye Are My Friends and Stand By My Servant Joseph. I think those are the names. Anyway, his writing is wonderful. So as they said at the beginning, you can get this night book for 40% off from Deseret Book, but you have to either order it by online or you need to call the store and order it and give them the code, which they talked about earlier. Does anybody not have that information? That it was, I can, if you don't get it today, let me know. In fact, I will put let me put my email address in the chat box. I'll do that right now so that you can all see what it is. And if you need to ask any questions or you don't think that you got something or you're wondering about something, just go ahead and email me, and there it is, and I will.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. This is Marilyn.
Yes.
Ray mentioned that posthumously, Eliza Lake had William sealed to her deceased sister. Does the deceased sister have a name?
Well, obviously she does, but you're taxing the gray cells now.
Okay,
Her maiden name would be Lake.
Okay. That's so interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I would have to go do some looking.
Is it on Family Search at all?
I don't remember. If it is on Family Search, it might be in, I don't remember if it's on Family Search or not.
Okay,
I think I've seen it on Family Search.
I'm sorry, what?
I think I've seen it on Family Search.
I'll
But
look.
do you have any information about it? Like, do you know if it was she just wanted to do that, or did they have some, I mean, do we know anything about what their relationship was in life?
Was it official?
I don't. I know I don't even know if the sister was married, but I know that it was common practice to seal people to priesthood holders that were thought well of, so they had a better chance to get into the celestial kingdom, so to speak, And that's not the practice today, but it was then. And so it could have been done for that reason, or it could have been done because the sister was unmarried in this life. I just don't know. But I do know that the request was made by Eliza Lake. So maybe it was the last request by her sister. There's just a lot I don't know.
You find out more about that, Ray.
Thank you for your research. Thank you for your research. Appreciate it.
Sure.
If you do find out more about that, Ray, maybe you could email it to me and I could send it out to this group. Otherwise, everybody can look on Family Search and see what they can find.
Well, that's the better option because it'll get people doing genealogy.
There you go. So,
what was the name of the book again?
The name of the book is called The Rise of the Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
The Rise of the Latter-day Saints, and it's called The Journals and Histories of Newell Knight. And then it's edited by Michael Hubbard McKay, William G. Hartley, it says. So that's what it is. And
Sorry. What the password is or what the magic word was to get the discount? Do you remember what the magic word was to get the discount?
Yes, when you find the book, you have to put in the the coupon box, you put in Night Fam, F-A-M.
Thank you.
And you just, it's all caps, Night Fam, and you just put that in the coupon box, and it will take off 40% off of the book for
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it says we'll be ending the breakout rooms in 1 minute. Edie says she sent a message. So from 2 to 3, they'll have an open mic in the main room, and from 3 to 4, we can come back and have a chat if we want to. We have arranged that for anyone who would like to talk as cousins and get to know each other better, know more about each other. When you do leave the room, down on the bottom right, there's a little blue thing that says leave the room. When you leave the room, it brings up a thing and says leave the whole thing or just leave the breakout. You only want to leave the breakout, or else you'll be kicked out and you'll have to come back in and be logged in again. So that's all. Thank you all for attending our session. Thank you, Ray, for your great presentation. Thank you all for being here. I think it was great, and we were all edified and learned a lot today, so that was great. So we will do that unless anyone has any other question.
You mentioned, Julie, that there were 3 books. Is it possible to get those other books? Are they still in print, or what's the situation with those other 2 books?
Ye Are My Friends is not in print anymore, although I did find it on eBay or somewhere, Google Books, someplace. I found it and bought a book anyway. But the other one, Stand by My Servant Joseph, I understand that it includes almost everything from the first book, that he kind of added to it, and it's longer and it includes almost everything. So the second one is still available, Stand by My Servant Joseph, but Ye Are My Friends is no longer in print. So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave the room and go back to the main thing and see what Edie has for us. So thank all of you for coming. All right, bye.
The 6th of 13 children born to Joseph Peck and Elizabeth Reed. Her siblings were Esther, Joseph, Nicholas, Berthina or Bethany, John, Noah, Anna, Elizabeth, Hezekiah, Ezekiel, Benjamin, and Jonathan. Polly's family lived in Vermont, which was claimed by New York at the time. Polly grew up watching her father serve as the captain of the militia, and after years of military confrontation and unrest, Polly's family was granted land in New York as compensation for her father serving in the military and not getting paid, and the family moved there in 1788. However, Polly stayed behind in Vermont. It was the practice for young women to hire out to do household chores, and perhaps Polly had a good place of employment, or possibly she stayed behind to help older siblings who had settled in the area and were raising their young families. Joseph and Polly grew up during the Revolutionary War and heard much talk of war, independence, Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. Polly was just 14 when her family moved to New York, leaving her behind in Vermont. Joseph was 23 and Polly was 21 when they were married. Joseph was described as a sober, honest, hardworking man who was generally loved and respected by all. Polly was a busy woman with a large family to take care of. They had an orchard and a large garden that Polly and the girls tended to, while Joseph and the men ran the mills and tended to the animals and fields. Polly and Joseph raised 7 children. Nahum was the oldest. He married Thankful and had 9 children. It is believed that Thankful's maiden name might have been Blackburn, although there is no documentation to prove it. Records show that Nahum and Thankful's second son, William, had the middle name of Blackburn, suggesting that was possibly the mother's maiden name, as was the common naming tradition of the day. Nahum's family lived near his parents in Colesville and moved with a group of saints to Ohio and then to Missouri. It's unclear whether he took his family to Nauvoo and then returned to Missouri, or just stayed in Missouri when the saints were driven from the state. Nahum's family did not move west with the saints and appeared to be living in Missouri at the time. However, there is an indication that during the California Gold Rush of 1849, Nahum went to California and then ended up in Flower Mound, Texas, where two of his sons, Joseph and Richard, were living. Esther married William Stringham, who was employed as hired help by her father, and together they had 5 children. Julia and Harriet were both healthy babies. Harlow, or Alonzo, died at the age of 8. Amos died as a baby, and then Esther died in 1833, giving birth to Hiram. At one point, William moved his family to Springfield, Illinois, and Julia and Harriet both married men from there and did not come west with the saints. The whereabouts of Esther's living descendants is unknown. Newell and Sally lived near the rest of the Knights in Colesville and traveled with the Colesville branch to Ohio and on to Missouri. After losing 2 children, Sally was told she would never give birth to a living child. So when Samuel was born, she named him after the Bible prophet and dedicated him to the Lord. 2 years later, she gave birth to Eli, but both mother and baby died and were buried together in Clay County, Missouri. Newell was called on a mission to help build the Kirtland Temple, and while there, he met and married Lydia Goldway, and together they had 7 more children. Newell died in Ponca, Nebraska, and Lydia, afraid Samuel's Coburn grandparents would come for him, sent him alone to Utah. She and her 7 children later came west, and most of them settled in southern Utah. Anna married Freeborn DeMille, and their family lived close to the Knights in Colesville. They had 7 children, and as a family they joined the church in 1830 and moved from New York to Ohio, Missouri, Nauvoo, and then came to Utah. Orpha died at winter quarters, but the rest of the family arrived in Utah and were sent to help settle Sanpete County, where many of her descendants still live. Joseph Jr. lived with his parents until Ohio, or possibly Missouri, when he married Betsy Covert, and together they had 4 daughters and 1 son that died as a child. In Nauvoo, he was asked to marry a second wife, Adeline Johnson, but no children were born to them. Joseph's family reached the valley on the 9th of September 1850 and settled in Salt Lake. Here he married Abba Weldon. It is believed that he was assigned to care for her temporarily, as there were no children born to this marriage. Since Joseph's only son had died, he was concerned about preserving the Knight name in his posterity. President Brigham Young advised him to marry a young English convert named Mary Woolerton, which he did. They had a daughter, Catherine, who did not live, and they also had 2 sons, Joseph III and Milan. The latter had 10 sons, which ensured Joseph a large male posterity. Polly married William Stringham, her brother-in-law, when her sister Esther died. Polly raised Esther's 3 children and had 1 son of her own. She was just 33 when she died in Nauvoo, leaving William a widower with 4 children. William remarried Jemima Angel shortly after Polly's death, but the marriage only lasted a few months before they were divorced. William married Eliza Lake a little over a year later, and together they raised Walter and 4 additional children that they had together. Elizabeth was the youngest of the 7 children. She was baptized November 1st, 1830, when she was 13 years old, and spent her teenage years in Missouri in a time that was harsh and turbulent. They were driven from homes and treated as enemies of the state. And in 1839, they were driven from the area. On February 3rd, 1842, Elizabeth married Joseph W. Johnson, a brick mason in Nauvoo. Elizabeth had 2 children born in Nauvoo, but both died as infants. Another daughter was born in Mount Pisgah, and a 4th daughter was born somewhere in Iowa, but died as a child. On the Pioneer Trail in southwestern Wyoming, Elizabeth gave birth to twin girls, but both babies died the same day. In Salt Lake, Elizabeth gave birth to a baby boy, Joseph, who lived only a day. She then gave birth to 2 more children who lived to adulthood and had children of their own, and that is where Elizabeth's posterity comes through. On the 6th of August, 1830, just 2 weeks after arriving in Missouri, Polly Peck Knight quietly fell asleep rejoicing in the new and everlasting gospel and praising God that she had lived to see the land of Zion. Polly had been ill, but was determined to go to Zion. She became so frail along the way that Newell went ashore at one of the stops and purchased wood for her coffin. Polly arrived in Zion, where she passed away just 2 weeks later. 2 years after her death, at the age of 61, Joseph Knight Sr. married Polly's sister-in-law, Phoebe Crosby Peck, who had been widowed with 4 young children. Together they had 2 more children, Ether Crosby and Charles Colson, who passed away at the age of 3. Ether was born in Missouri, traveled across the plains as a teenager, married a Canadian immigrant in Utah, had 5 children in Utah while settling Draper, and then was sent to California, where 5 more children were born. He eventually died in San Francisco. Those who are the children of Joseph and Polly Knight. As you can see, a family is like branches on a tree. We all grow in different directions, yet our roots remain as one. We all have the Knight blood coursing through our veins, and their legacy is etched in our hearts. Today, Joseph and Polly's ancestors are sprinkled throughout most of the 50 states and in Canada, and sometimes it gets confusing to know which Polly, Elizabeth, or Sally we're talking about. Throw in Joseph, Newell, Samuel, and William, and it gets even more interesting. Using a word cloud generator, all of the names of Joseph and Polly's children and grandchildren were entered, and this is the graphic showing the common names. The Knight family were a close family. They lived close to each other in Colesville, traveled to Ohio, and then on to Missouri as the Colesville branch. They endured persecution and loss together in Missouri, but rebuilt in Nauvoo. They were among the last to leave Nauvoo, helping straggling saints across Iowa, and most finally arrived in Utah. Once in Utah, they were sent to various parts of the state to settle. As the family grew, they were spread out across several states. In January 1842, Joseph Smith wrote a tribute to Father Knight and his loyal family, saying, "It shall be said of him by the sons of Zion, while there is one of them remaining, that this man was a faithful man in Israel." The prophet then promised that his name, meaning Joseph Knight Sr., shall never be forgotten. His posterity now living helped fulfill that promise, one friend made to another, so many years ago.